Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever in the world you're joining us. Just like that, we are at session number 3, Africa's Stream, Women in Cybersecurity Beyond Borders Conference 2021. A conference that goes beyond race, beyond ethnicity, beyond sexuality, beyond gender, beyond ability, and beyond stereotypes. Truly beyond borders, connecting cybersecurity experts and enthusiasts from across the world in perspective and insights on what they can do in the world of cybersecurity. Now, when I think of beyond borders, I look at the borders that this conference is breaking when it comes from an abilities perspective. We look at the exceptionalities in people, and we look at cybersecurity as an inclusive space, a space where cybersecurity is no longer about the professional in cybersecurity. It's not about that one technical individual, it's about all of us. Truly, the hashtag for this conference, hashtag #WeAreCyber, embodies inclusivity and embodies the opportunity for all of us to engage in the conversations in cybersecurity as we all are cyber. My name is Abbas Hirji, and many of you know me as the host of the Power Hour, faculty at Durham College, teaching in both artificial intelligence as well as cybersecurity. And I want to give a shout out to the team at CyberX, Cyber Exchange, and at the Africa Cyber Defense Forum for making day 1 of Beyond Borders happen. My topic that I'm going to delve into is not something that is away from the strain of the first 2 topics that we had this morning, afternoon, and evening, depending on where you're joining us from. But I want to dive a little bit deeper to what we mean when we talk about cybercrime. Shout out to the team at Kaspersky as well for making this happen. And one of my guests from Kaspersky today reminds us that C for cyber, for a whole bunch of other things, confidence in cyber, but C for culture. There's a culture of cybersecurity that we need to understand. You see, when we use technology, we make that mistake where we think we use technology. We actually live it. And the cultures that we imbibe when we utilize technology for digital payments, teaching, for education, for accessing government services, all create a culture of how we approach cyber. And in this session, we're going to understand how within that culture is cybercrime manifested, how specifically within the beautiful continent of Africa do we see new threat landscapes emerging from a cybercrime perspective, and what can you and I, what can we do as part of the We Are Cyber movement to enhance cybersecurity postures across Africa. Without further ado, I thank you all for joining, and I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves in a specific way or two. To begin with, I'm going to ask Sherifat, who is currently in Canada as well. I'm going to ask her to do a couple of things. Sherifat, can you introduce yourself, tell us what time it is from wherever you're joining, and tell us why is this subject of cybercrime in Africa important to you? Sherifat.
Thank you, Ali, and good morning, everyone. It's about 3 a.m. here in the city of Calgary, Alberta, and it's my pleasure to be here. My name is Sherifat Akinwonmi. I'm a cybersecurity specialist. I work with United Farmers of Alberta, UFA, and it's my pleasure being here. I know it's so early in the morning, but I'm doing this for Africa. I'm doing this for CyberX Exchange, who is providing such a great platform to have this discussion. And so, Ali, to your question, cybercrime. In plain text, the moment you use your computer, you use your internet or all of your computing resources to do something that looks like a fraud or a crime or something that is illegal, you're committing a cybercrime, basically. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I want to thank you. I know it's early where you're at. It's early here as well in Ontario, but you've been a trooper, and especially I love the fact that you constantly mention that this is for the community, this is for Africa. And I think it's really important for our audience to understand, to realize the diaspora, the African diaspora that lives here in Canada, and how they're constantly giving back to new homes as well as their. Sherifat, as always, thank you very much. I'm reminded of the African proverb that says, even if you have the best cooking pot, it's not going to cook your food. You've got to have the right ingredients. You've got the best technology out there. It's not going to make you safe. You've got to have the right people like Sherifat who keep giving back. So thank you for joining, Sherifat. I appreciate your time. I'm now going to take a flight over and head to another continent, Africa specifically. And Ola, we're going to start off with you. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do and where are you joining us from today? Ola?
Thank you, Ali, and it's good to be here. And good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Olawumi Babalola. I'm currently the country CISO for Standard Chartered Bank Nigeria. I also oversee some of our African locations in Mauritius, Cameroon, and Botswana. And I'm live from Lagos, Nigeria, and it's 7 minutes past 10 a.m. And so I'm excited to be here and looking forward to the interesting and insightful discussion with the set of panelists that we have here today. And I'm assured that our audience will really have a lot of insightful information to take away. So cybercrime, as the name suggests, right, it's any criminal activity that you do using a computer system or targeting a computer system. Say, for example, you're trying to initiate a denial of service that's using, a computer system, or you're targeting trying to steal data, from a network, an organization system. So that's targeting a computer system. So that's basically what cybercrime is about. And I'm so passionate about it because because it's a crime, the impact is always negative, and sometimes it even leads to death. It leads to bankruptcy. It leads to people losing their businesses and all their life savings. And I think that what you're doing here today, educating people, in diaspora everywhere around the world on how to guide, against cybercrime, how to protect themselves, and the basic and necessary information that they need to use, they need to know, to be able to do that. So once again, I'm excited to be here and looking forward to a very interesting session.
Thank you so much for that, and I would agree with you 100% that once you understand the nitty-gritty of cybercrime, you begin to realize its impact goes more than just the loss of a couple of dollars. It has mental health repercussions as well. It has impacts on life as well as on death. I think it's extremely important that you use the word insights, because I've said this before. Eyesight is useless if your insight is blind. Just because you're seeing something, you're not able to understand the ramifications of it. You're not quite truly understanding what you're looking at. Well, thank you so much for emphasizing on insights. I'm now going to go over to someone that I've shared the stage with before as well. Lydie, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Where are you joining us from, and why is this subject particular? Lydie, over to you.
Thanks, Ali. Thanks so much for hosting me again here. Thanks to the whole team. I'm Lydie. Lydie Ngo Nogol. I'm from Cameroon. I live in Cameroon, and I work in Cameroon for Francophone Africa as a Chief Information Security Officer. Ali, it's 10 a.m. now in Cameroon, so yeah, nice place to be. I am information security professional with almost 17 years working in cybersecurity building strategy, executing strategy, working as enabling information security transformation in many companies, including telecommunication operators, which is something I do like. I really enjoy doing it. But something I also enjoy doing is awareness, cybersecurity awareness. I define myself as a cybersecurity evangelist because I really think that is important. It's important all over the world, but it's important in Africa also to understand the risk around cybersecurity and to raise the flag, to raise awareness so that everybody feel like he's concerned about it. To your question, Ali, what cybersecurity, what cyber crimes? Ola and Sherifat rightly say it, with very simple words, and I think it's important to say it in very simple words. Is the use of computing system to perpetrate an illegal act. But something I wanted to add on it is that we can somehow all either be a target, a victim, of an instrument to perpetrate a cyber attack, to perpetrate a cyber crime, which is very important and bring us to the fact that by securing ourselves, by securing myself, I'm securing my relatives, I'm securing the society, I'm securing the organization where I'm working. So it's very important at some point of time. It's very important at some point of time, Ali, to know that literally security is everyone's responsibility. We all need to put hands together to secure ourselves.
Absolutely, and I couldn't have said that better. When it comes to cybersecurity, no individual is an island. We're all in this together, and we need to understand that if one person in that system is vulnerable, it opens up the vulnerability to the rest of us. I think this is something when we go to Lehan as well, and we talk about the Kaspersky optic on cybersecurity, specifically around frontline folks and people at the entry points, those vulnerabilities. Lydie, once again, thank you so much for everything that you do and joining me today on this session. And now I'm going to go to somebody who's making her debut on the Cyber Exchange platform, someone who I'm sure I will develop a strong friendship with and continue to have sessions with. Heba, welcome, and I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Where are you joining us from? And very quickly, tell us, why is the subject of cybercrime important to you? Heba.
Thank you so much, Ali. My name is Heba Farhat. I'm joining you from Egypt. Here it's around 11 a.m. So about me briefly, I work as a senior cybersecurity consultant in CISIF MEA. CISIF is based in USA. However, we are working in the Egyptian branch here in Egypt. My work is mainly about helping organizations to secure their business and ultimately their customers. And this is the main thing that attracted me to cybersecurity. When I started my career in cybersecurity, I wanted to protect companies and customers. I want to protect their data. I love this idea. I felt that this job is gonna have like an added value. There will be a huge impact when I work in cybersecurity. That's what made me, beside my work, I do a lot of voluntary work to spread awareness about cybersecurity. That including teaching kids, teens, parents about cybersecurity, university students, employees, how to stay secure, how to defend yourself, and all that stuff. Besides that, I love organizing conferences, competitions, all that with an objective to teach and spread awareness about cybersecurity. So cybersecurity to me, it's my passion. It's not just a job, and I enjoy working in cybersecurity so much. So back to your point about the cybercrime. For me, when we are talking about cybercrime, we are talking about black hackers who are having a malicious intent to break into a system with various objectives. They can be political, financial, whatever the reason. And I'm here in cybersecurity, and especially I'm working as an ethical hacker to protect companies and prevent this from happening. I'm sure that there is like no silver bullet to like defend against cybersecurity crimes. However, we can eliminate that, we can decrease that. And this is what I'm working on. I'm always studying, always taking technical certifications because my work is purely technical. Because at the end of the day, I want to like beat the black hackers and make this world a little bit safer place. This is briefly about what I'm doing.
It's always wonderful when you see diverse voices talking about taking the fight forward and fighting the good fight. In this conference, which is also about breaking barriers and breaking stereotypes, it's great to see women, when we see different groups, different communities, etc., fighting the good fight on the front line. So Heba, it's amazing to have you. And one of the things that comes to mind is you've got both creativity and innovation. Creativity is just thinking about something new. Innovation is getting it done. And the amount you've got done in a short time is quite remarkable. And I'm looking forward to chatting with you a little. And lastly,
Me too.
but
Thank
not
you.
the least, you're always welcome, Heba. My dear friend from Kaspersky, Lehan. Now, Lehan, I know this is our first engagement together. We have a lot to talk about the South African cricket team. It happened to be my favorite cricket team till about the 1999 World Cup, but we'll leave that for a separate time altogether. Lehan, it's a pleasure. You're making your debut on this platform as well. It's a pleasure to have you on. Can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about Kaspersky. Where are you calling in from? And what's your perspective on cybercrime? Lehan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ali. It's such an honor to be here and share the stage with some of these ladies. I'm really impressed by some of the words that were shared today. And I think it's quite an interesting time that we live in, but I don't think without COVID, we would have been able to have a panel like this ever, from all walks of life and all different areas in the world. So this is one of the veiled, positive things that we can actually take out of the pandemic. So my name is Lehan Van Den Heever. I actually work as an enterprise cybersecurity advisor at Kaspersky. Pretty much been working within the cybersecurity industry since about 2006. So my interest, similar to most of the people here, has pretty much been peaked because I've had direct incident in the family and so on with regards to cybersecurity and the exploitation of critical information and personal information. So it's just been a passion of mine ever since. It's also the unique thing about cybercrime, and maybe to touch on your question about what cybercrime is all about, I think the ladies have summarized the gist of it pretty well. But I think one of the extra things, just to add on to what was already mentioned, is that cybercrime is also performed very anonymously at very rapid rates from anywhere in the world. So its devastating effects could far outreach what a physical cyber or what a physical crime activity could. So you are talking about people with the ability as a single organization to take down state security systems, or you're talking at a much smaller level of smaller groups attacking with phishing campaigns at banks' customers and stealing millions of dollars of money. So yes, it's pretty much any activity that results in criminal activity from a machine or from a computer of sorts. But it can really be devastating, and I'm really excited to see how this conversation is going to unfold today. To see what we can actually do and how far behind the curve are we. And I think Lydia mentioned already about the awareness. So this is probably going to be one of the themes throughout the session that needs to be emphasized, because I think that cyber security and the cyber world has evolved far faster than what we anticipated. And, we've got kids walking around with smartphones with access to extreme technology that was never really taught or censored in any such way. So we really need to kind of backpedal and, work back on the awareness and get people to understand the power of these little tools. Even though we think there's YouTube and Facebook on it, there's a lot more that's going on. And we just kind of need to catch up as far as awareness is concerned. So I'm really happy to be here, and happy to see how this conversation is going to go.
Absolutely. And Lehan, while I was being a little mischievous with the reference to cricket, I think that's also a very good metaphor for how sports has also been digitized and what's happened as a result of crime through digital means, and how that can impact the worth of a nation, the identity of a nation. For our audience, I think it's extremely important. As my colleague before, who hosted the session before this and moderated, Farouk Nair, said, we're getting perspective from different corners of Africa. South Africa, as a relatively young nation in the history of nations today, the impact of cyber crime on national identity is also something that I definitely want to dive into as we move into the next 50 minutes of this session. To my panelists, what a wonderful introduction from all of you. In your introductions alone, you've summarized so many important topics. I already see a couple of questions coming in, so let's jump right into the conversation. And if it's okay, Ola, I'd like to start with you based on the surgically precise definition that you provided on cybercrime. I say this often to my students. One of our biggest problems as a society is that we tend to focus our energies on old and when we look at Africa, a lot of new innovations are happening. Payments, people advancing their education through online means, people accessing government services through online means. Why do you think, especially when we read reports such as the one written by Kaspersky not too long ago, in fact, one where Lehan was quite a bit, why are we seeing an increase in cybercrime? Ola, your personal perspective, please.
Okay, thank you, Ali, for that wonderful question. So, Africa is a vast continent and one that the youth constitutes the greatest proportion of the different strata that we have. And one that also is economically emerging. And so you find these two things coming together where there are a lot of jobless youths and they see an opportunity to making money in a very, very quick way through cybercrime, especially because they perpetrate this from the comfort of their homes. So I'm sure if you go online, you would find pictures where you find a group of boys, maybe 10, 20 of them in one small room, all on their laptops, trying to defraud people across the world. And I think this is what is most responsible for the growth of cybercrime in Africa. It is the fact that people are jobless and they see an opportunity in cybercrime. Now, I'd like to mention that cybercrime is not limited by geography, and so it is global. And because of the fact that they can reach wherever or whoever they want to reach across the world. You also did mention the increase in mobile use in Africa. So we keep on seeing um, a two-digit increment year on year on internet penetration. So for example, in Nigeria, close to 200 million people have mobile, use mobile and the internet that comes with it. So it becomes accessible for them as well. And because the targets are increasing, daily, in a geometrical order, and it's easy for them, they make money, without having to work. And they also have an environment that allows them to go scot-free, from the monies and, whatever it is they make, from the proceeds of the crime, so to say. So all of these things, when you put it together, it encourages them, to continue to go and perpetrate this crime as well. And digital payment as well, it continues to increase in Africa. As of last year, we had over 500 million registered mobile users. This is huge. And all of these people are being targeted, for their identity, for their payment card details, for them to be able to steal monies, from their accounts, which from where I see it, continue, to be perpetrated on a daily basis. And all of this still leads down to awareness and education, just like Lydie mentioned, because we also have a population in Africa that is not very educated, especially when it comes to internet and cybercrime. They continue to be gullible, they continue to fall prey, to this kind of attacks. And when you bring all of this together, it forms a perfect potpourri for cybercrime to continue to increase, from my perspective.
And I thank you for again, context is king and queen, and you've really elaborated in context really, really well here. To our audience, I also want you to look at how Ola has underscored the motivations behind cybercrime. and working with this aspect of motivations behind cybercrime. Sherifat, I'll go to you, Heba, Lydie, and then to Lehan. And Sherifat, this is a question that's come in, and you know what, if you're not entirely in tune with answering, we can certainly pass it, but based on our previous discussion, Sherifat, I think this question will certainly be one that will bring in your attention. And Sherifat, the question is that when you look at motivations, are there any political motivations in Africa that are driving the push around crime? Sherifat, any perspective on that?
Yeah, thanks, Ali. And I think Ola has provided a background to the major motivation for cybercrime in Africa. It's usually financial. So I know that a lot of the cyber criminals in Africa, or even generally globally, it's to get the money. And that is why you see from a landscape of the targets of cybercrime, mostly financial institutions, retail, companies in retail, people are going after personal information of people and selling it in the dark web, all because they want to get money from it. So that's one of the major motivation. Another would be to cause state espionage, just to create problems. I know politically, some people have used cyber crime to try to cause issues in countries, you know, one political party or ideology attacking the government or attacking the other party. I think in 2019, or was it 2015 in Nigeria, there was a time where the INEC, the electoral body for Nigeria, their website was defaced, and there were lots of issues around personal information being out there and a lot of attacks. So we really don't know from which these attacks emancipated from. But I do know that the major motivation is financial in Nigeria. And this isn't far-fetched. It's the fact that a lot of people are after how to make quick money. You know, they want to quickly do something that will generate money. And they also want to capitalize on the ignorance of people. They know that very few people will be, not very few, surprisingly, a lot of people will be willing to come to make a to make a post, yeah, and then they comment on social media, revealing personal information. You'll be surprised if you scan through Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, the amount of information you can get from people. If you look at, for instance, it's very common of celebrities, I know in Africa, to want to encourage their fans, and then they say, oh, drop your account number. In another post, so a lot of people drop. And another post, they say, drop your date of birth. Yeah? If you have the date of birth and you have the account details, and you can see the person's profile to see, you know, probably their location and some other information, it doesn't take a lot to create another image, a clone of that person online. Identity theft is very, very possible, and is one of the major reasons why these things continue to thrive. So because of the ease of perpetrating attacks, and also because of the gains that comes after it. So in terms of attacking infrastructure, is a lot of cyber criminals in Africa do not find it that easy because they actually need a lot of sophisticated tools. But to go after people who they see as the soft targets, they just use social engineering and they're able to target certain people to get. So financial is one of the major motivations for cybercrime in Africa.
Absolutely, and I thank you for tying in, like, you know, admitting that yes, there are political drivers for it, but at the end of the day, it does come down to the financial return on doing those kind of activities. Heba, if we can come to you, and then we'll go to Lydie, and then get some perspective from Lehan. And Heba, this is a question that formulated in my own head, but also has come in from one of the audience members, just talking about some of the tools that are used in crime. So for example, when I read the report by Kaspersky, they talk about aspects such as, you know, cards not present crimes that are done without actually having a physical card, some attacks that are done through very technical means. Can you talk to us a little bit about the tools that you're seeing being used besides social engineering within Africa to cause some harm in cyberspace? Heba?
Okay. Actually, we don't always need tools to cause harm because, as you said, maybe it's social engineering and maybe it's something a little bit advanced. but it doesn't need that like huge technical skills. For example, if you're gonna look back in history, we can see Mirai attack. Mirai attack, briefly, it happened years ago, and its objective is to bring down internet service provider that is based on Twitter, Amazon, and all like that. And how did they did that? They used the Internet of Things. They used coffee machines and all these Internet of Things, yeah, and simple machines. At the end of the day, to make them at the same time attack the same servers or the same server to bring it down, so that they are doing the distributed denial of service. And how did they did that? Did they need like technical tools or things like that? No, they were hacking the coffee machines and the similar stuff by using the default credentials. Just by knowing this type or this model of the coffee machine, you know the default credentials, and now they take over this coffee machine because it's already exposed to the internet. It has an public IP address, and you can take over it. Similarly, they were doing that to many machines as well. At the end of the day, they have an army that they can control, and they can do whatever they can do with that, whatever they want to do, whatever their intention. And at the end of the day, they use their army to all of them at the same time send a quick request to the same server, and definitely the server cannot handle all these requests at the same time. And what happened at the end of the day? The server went down. And as we all know in business, time is money. So whenever the server went down, the service is not available anymore, and the company had to lose money. So yes, we don't need that complex tools to come out with complex attacks that has really an impact. However, there may be the usage of tools and zero-days attacks and exploiting vulnerabilities in the technologies to, at the end of the day, gain access to the system they are targeting.
Thank you so much for that, Heba. And I agree with you 100% that it's not about the complexity of the tools. Sometimes simplicity is the most complex process.
Yeah.
And I agree with you again. The Internet of Things can very quickly become the Internet of Threats. So Heba, thank you for that perspective. Lydie, we'll come to you and then we'll go to Lehan. And Lehan, there are two questions that have come to you. So I'll come to that second. But Lydie, let's go to you first. And Lydie, working with this idea of teams, we often talk about the cyber. When you're talking about a culture of cybercrime, is it true within Africa or just even globally, but if we can get more perspective within Africa, is it individuals that are running these kind of cybercrimes, or are you seeing gangs of cybercrimes starting to form? Lydie, your perspective, please.
Yes, thanks, Ali, for the question. Very important one. But before coming to that, let's come to what Eva says about the perspective on the Internet of Things, because that's something that also increased the attack surface in Africa. Because as all over the world, we're also going to a huge digital transformation. We're going to there's a big increase in internet penetration. I think we're leading the world. Maybe we're about to lead the world in terms of mobile financial services. The mobile financial services are getting increased exponentially in Africa. That's something which increased the attack surface. Obviously, I mean, the cyber criminals should be very happy to hear that. That's something that really increased the attack surface. And that's something that the fact that the culture of cybersecurity is not that high. Let's say the digital services, the digital product are coming faster in Africa, but the culture of security is not there. That makes us very vulnerable, and it's not only, as Eba said, it's not only a matter of technology, it's really a question of the person, is really the willingness of the people. On a simple simple phone call, I can ask to someone to share his bank details, his PIN code, without doing anything with technology. On a phone call, just by faking an identity, I will have the information, So that culture is a real threat for us, and we really need to enforce it, to enforce the culture and ensure that everybody is aware and everybody acts securely, like it's a behavior. It should become a behavior. Now, to the question, is it individual? Do we have gang? I think it's all of that. We have people, we have young kids. I've seen in Cameroon, young kids coming to me. I was working in another company in my previous work. I was having young kids coming to me saying, hey, We have found some vulnerability. We're playing, find some vulnerability, see what we do. I mean, it's kind of, they are playing. You see what I mean? They are playing to see what is happening. They are playing to see how far they can go. They are in the border of the law, not really bad hackers, but not that good, So yeah, we have those kind of person. We have, I think Ola touched on it. We have those people that are looking for money, building strategy to see how they can build a very complicated story, say that they are in need of something. They are in need of something that can push someone to give them money. We have that kind of people. And for those kind of people, they can be in bound, sharing tips, sharing how you can do to easily, get someone, trap someone using the technology. Those can be in bound. So we have many of them, different type of them. But something also we need to raise early, I think, is that it's not only insider truth. All the criminals around the world, they are seeing Africa coming into digital, and they can also use us either to attack us, either to use our devices to attack the other countries. So we also need to care about it and protect our infrastructure.
Absolutely, and I think it's very key to look at when you look at Africa strategically from an economic standpoint. And this conference has not just been about the technicalities in cybersecurity. It's also been about addressing issues of racism. And when we go back to the colonial mentality that we've often tried to disrupt in this conference, looking at Africa as a space where I think you've really emphasized that point very, very well. And it's important for Africa and Africans to begin to become cyber resilient. Thank you, Lydie, for making a multitude of points in that very short statement. Taking all of this together and all of this expert opinion, Lehan, let's come to you. When we read the report quite recently, 2020 was released by Kaspersky. Many of those reports cited in them, you talk about a couple of issues. First, you emphasize people, process, and in that order, the importance of understanding the role of. Then talk about how long it typically takes Africa to recognize that a breach of mentioned 180 days before it's realized that something has happened. Can you give us a sense of how, with your work at Kaspersky, you're putting together data constantly on the threat landscape in Africa, and how are you actioning some of the insights that you're finding within your region?
Thank you. Just want to mention those were some very, very interesting points, and all of it very true. And the attacks that we are seeing is growing ever diverse. So yes, you're getting the single guys trying to attack companies. You've got the big organizations, like physical organizations that perform attacks that are state-sponsored sometimes. There's a lot of evidence to prove that there's these types of attacks going on as well. And then you now starting to see stuff like cyber mercenaries and hackers for hire. So you can actually distribute your attack amongst hired skilled individuals to take care of parts of the attack for you. Now that's got two implications for us as Kaspersky. The first one is that they can develop at a cheaper cost, which means they can attack more often and more frequently with more devastating effect. And secondly, they start distributing their code amongst several different people and organizations, which means attribution becomes very difficult. It becomes very difficult to see who's behind the attack. If we because we use some solutions in order to try and identify within this code, we identify what we call genotypes to actually see, is this part of a larger campaign or a different attacking group that we've seen before, so that we can actually try and use this intelligence to see whether there are some groups that are becoming very influential and getting the upper hand and becoming extremely strong. And obviously there are a handful of very big attack organizations that are behind most of the very notorious attacks, but we need that intelligence. Now, Kaspersky uses about 400 million users worldwide, globally, in order to get intelligence from them. Then we also use our own spam traps, sinkholes If we don't have presence in country, like in some smaller islands and so on, you'll be surprised how much interesting information and digital intelligence we get from those countries. So we'll actually get some domain space there and get some honeypots and things going so that we can get visibility of the entire globe's threat intelligence and attacks and things going back and forth. And the reason we need to do this is because, again, we need to not just understand which attacks happened where, we need to understand the content behind and the context behind the attacks. We need to understand where is the majority of attacks happening and going, and what is the majority intentions, and is there state sponsorship involved? Is there enormous devastating attacks happening, like of critical infrastructure or industrial systems or IoT, as was mentioned before? IoT is going to be a very, very difficult one to contain because you've got developers of hundreds of thousands of different technology companies that want to get their devices online so that they can, compete in that field. But very few of them really care about security, right? They only care about getting the device stably online to give you, I don't know, heartbeats on your wrist or something like that, whatever their business is, which means at some point we're going to sit with a situation where there's hundreds of millions of devices online that have very, very close personal information, like your heart rate and your microwave can be online, and your kettle and your baby monitors, and all of these very, very intimate things that were never ever suspected to be online are now going to be online. So and this is already happening. I mean, and to come back to Sherifa's point as well. So in Africa, what makes us a little bit unique, and I mean, I don't want to play the card of, Africa is always a couple of years behind on innovation, but because of that, it seems as if we are starting to notice at Kaspersky that there are some attacks that are actually being launched from within Africa, and that's because we sit with a lot of interesting things in Africa for the world to gain. As much as we might be one of the more impoverished continents, we actually have a lot of minerals. We have a lot of things in our continent that the rest of the world want to, get a hand on. So we've actually started noticing, if you look at our threat intelligence around Southern Africa, we've got thousands of command and control centers operating from within South Africa. And, and it's just a testament again, because of the level of sophistication in our internet service providers and so on, that it's easier to come and host a command and control center here, so to say, than it might be in first world countries where they've got a ton of technology to detect that kind of activity very quickly. So the threat intelligence, and the reason we are at the forefront of threat intelligence, and we also pride ourselves in doing APT discovery. We've got a team called GREAT, Global Research and Analysis Team, and they actually go and specifically find these major threats and then start physically as a human being investigating them. Of course, we lend a lot of our expertise on machine learning and artificial intelligence so that we can kind of stay up to the speed of what the hackers are able to access. But we still need those experts to go and really investigate closely what is going on. And it's been very, very interesting in the last 3 years or so, and I'm sure the ladies here will agree, we've had a huge rise in Africa, where I remember 5 or 6 years ago, we would hear about APTs and you'll think, wow, it's like you can make Hollywood movies about how cool these attacks are. They're actually cool. I want to read about them. And now we're seeing those attacks in our backyard. We're starting to see them more and more. We've had so many attacks in the last 3 years that have reached mainstream media, and some of them local hackers. I mean, some of them even admitted being local. So threat intelligence is the only way that we can have even a remote impact on fighting this back. If we don't keep a record of each and every sighting so that we can take the metadata around each sighting to build a picture, then we don't know where this is all heading and we don't know where it's going to come from. We need to get from a reactive state into somehow being able to predict what's coming around the bend.
Absolutely, and for those that forget their history, they are condemned to repeat it. And if we don't really study the history and the patterns of some of these cybercrimes, they're most likely going to happen and resurface in much more malicious forms than previously. I also, Lehan, really like the aspect of you emphasizing on questions to our audience. When different labs that Lehan mentioned from Kaspersky, there are links that are going down the ticker. You can take a look at those links, lots of links to different papers from Kaspersky, but also different articles that you can reference. So Lehan, thank you for emphasizing questions. I've said this before, questions are keys that unlock the mind. So thank you for doing a very good job in a short period of time. We have about 15 minutes left, and there are a couple of questions that have come in, and I'm going to give one to each of our panel, and we'll come to a little bit of a soft landing and a conclusion. Sherifat, let's start with you. And this is a question around legality. And I'll read it verbatim because I think it's a really well put together question. And it simply says, is the law keeping up with the rate of how crime in cybersecurity is changing? Heard that just a little bit. Is our law able to keep pace with different kind of crimes that we're seeing from a cyber perspective in Africa? Sherifat, a very big question. Platform's all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Ali. And unfortunately, our laws cannot or do not keep up with the rate at which we have in cybercrime in Africa. So I know a couple of governments have done so much work around this. I know in Nigeria, there was the Cybercrime Act, and this was way back in 2005. But before then, before they came up with that act, the cybercrime had been in Nigeria for a very long time. And at some point, I know that we were really yearning for some form of consequence for these people. So it was a case where you will get a text message saying, this is what you need to do to provide the same number, calling and texting so many people. And you would believe that with a combination of the law enforcement agencies, the telecommunications companies, we should be able to bring this person to book. But fortunately, it was a case where even if this person was caught, there was no law at some point to be able to penalize the person. And so we are at a stage where the law is practically playing a catch-up on the cyber attacks and the cyber criminals, rather than being proactive to say, these are the things that are going to happen. I know that particular act was also recently reviewed. I know I read somewhere where they were working on overhauling and reviewing the whole act, because even when the act came up, there were a lot of ambiguity. Some things were not very clear on how to handle some cases. And unfortunately, digital, like almost all the panelists have said today, the digital world in Africa is growing at a very exponential rate. Highly, like when you compare it to the first world countries, incomparable at the rate at which we are growing. We have Africa being largely populated with young people who are restless, who are eager to do something, and who also has a lot of time on their hands. So for instance, the education system in Nigeria, I can speak categorically, is not as it should be. So you have cases where youths are not even in school. They are at home, they are not studying, they are not working. And these are people that are hungry to learn, to utilize whatever they can lay their hands on. And they easily fall into cybercrime without even knowing the consequences. And even where there are consequences, nobody follows up. So you have the case where even the police, the law enforcement do not even understand what a cybercrime is. So I know last year was such a terrible time in Nigeria in October, where we had EndSARS. The EndSARS protest, I'll just take 30 seconds to talk about it, was about the Nigerian youths protesting against the police officers going after people just because they had an iPhone, just because they had a laptop. To the Nigerian police, they believe the fact that you have an iPhone and a laptop, you're a cyber criminal. There are some people who are graphic designers, who build websites, who do other things, and they need all of these tools. But because they find you with an iPhone and a laptop, you're a cyber criminal. Forgetting the actual cyber criminals that are perpetrating fraud. So the law basically, Ali, in short, is that they're playing catch up and in a totally different direction from where the cyber criminals are going.
Sherifat, very well said. And I'm going to say this again. I've said this in previous sessions. I'm voting you president of the world because the way in which you articulated that was very strong, but also pointing out to very specific examples, social movements that also push us towards understanding cybercrimes. With that question in mind, Heba, I'll come to you, then to Ola, then Lydie, and then Lehan. Heba, this is a question that I think relates to what Sherifat was talking about, but also relates to your own work in ethics hacking, which you mentioned. That is on the role of activists. That's on the role of social movements that are driven by hacking, and in some cases, what they call hacking for good. Can you provide some of your perspective on activists and groups like Anonymous, for example? Such groups emerge out of Africa? Are we seeing hacking and are we seeing cyber attacks as a means to fight the good fight, so to speak? How about your perspective?
Yeah, I have seen that actually recently, about a month ago. There was a group, I'm not sure, should I mention their name or I shouldn't? Okay, there's a group, they're called Hide 01. They are a group of hacktivists. They have an objective. They think that when it comes to training material and things that you can use to learn about cybersecurity, they think that must be free. So if there is like an institute that is selling a training course, they hack it and they sell it for free to everyone. So they're doing that to the top training institutes in Africa. And I guess this is a worldwide. I don't think they are African based. I guess this is worldwide. And I've just seen that in a very expensive course that was made by SANS Institute. They hacked the course, and also offensive security. They hacked many courses of them, and they published it at their own website. And when I read about them and start to ask people about them, this is their objective. They think that training material should be free and everyone has a right to learn, regardless they are financially privileged or not. And accordingly, they hack anything and they sell it to people for free. My insights about that, they like have a point of view. However, how they are executing it is not very right, because some people really put effort to build that material, and it is like the summarization or the conclusion of years of experience and hard work. So it's not really fair that we steal the effort and give that to everyone for free. On the other hand, I see people put really huge amount of money for a training material, and I don't think that this money really the value of the course. The course is good and everything, but not that amount of money, especially that not everyone is financially privileged. I believe they can make it for money, but reasonable amount of money, and they can make a scholarship for people who are not financially privileged, because we don't want to have lack of cybersecurity expert skills just because someone who is really smart and good, but just that he is not financially privileged. That should not be an excuse to want to learn about cybersecurity. So this is how it should be. If someone can pay it, go ahead, but reasonable amount of money. And if someone cannot pay it, you can offer them a scholarship or installments or anything, or discount or whatever, because everyone has a right to learn about cybersecurity and be as good as everyone who is financially privileged.
Thank you so much for making those references, and I appreciate the fact that you asked as well. And I want to give a shout out to the organizers and my panelists for making a safe space for us to have these discussions. One thing I can say, Heba, is that you've definitely given me the topic idea for a session or one-on-one session with you on intellectual property and cybersecurity. Intellectual property and protecting intellectual property in Africa, especially from an education perspective, is definitely a topic that you and I will have a power hour on. So Heba, thank you so much for your energy and your perspective. Ola, I want to come to you, Lydie, and then we'll go to Lehan, and then we'll wrap up. And Ola, this is a question which I'll again read verbatim, and this is from a perspective of compliance. Cybersecurity is not just about compliance, it's about commitment to those compliant frameworks. What are some ways in which organizations can make sure, especially in Africa, whether small organizations or large, that they're staying true to some of the frameworks? Are these frameworks sufficient enough to ensure compliance from a cybersecurity perspective? Ola, your perspective.
Okay, thank you, Ali, for the question. And it reminds me of the saying that compliance is not always security, right? You can be compliant and not be secured. And I think for every organization, whether you're big or small, your aim should be security. and then ultimately compliance. And so I think for you to do that as an organization, there are some things that you need to focus on and to put in place. And the first is about your strategy, right? Your cybersecurity strategy. And I think that for me, it's always been once you get that right, and it's easier for you other things to begin to fall in lines. So there's some basic things that you need to do aside the strategy as well. Getting your management buy-in, because that usually it's a big problem in Africa. A lot of them are focused on making money, the bottom line. And when you bring up issues around cybersecurity, information security, they don't want to listen until it impacts them. And then, they're willing to release money and get things fixed. So it's important that that is also done right, getting management buy-in. It's easier to cascade the culture, down if from the top, you get it embedded, at that point in time. And so it's really, really important that you put a framework and a strategy in place. Now, the challenge that we experience in Africa, especially for small and medium businesses, is the issue of cost. So it's usually expensive for them to implement these frameworks, to implement, these standards. And so they decide, make up their mind that they don't even want to do anything. And I usually tell people that what's important is knowing what to do and then doing them to fit your businesses. You do not have to, for example, buy a tool that is so expensive. You can, for instance, get one that is open source, customize it to your business, and then you can get things, the security that you want. So it's about knowledge as well. Skill shortage in Africa, just as the rest of the world. So they don't even have access to the right skill sets, and they don't have access to the right information, to the right kind of advice that they need for their businesses. They are the mercies of big consultants who want to make money and then quote, and then at the end of the day, they are not able to do something, or maybe they just do 1 out of 10 things. So for me, it's always about cyber hygiene, right? So I tell them, you need to keep the right cyber hygiene. You need to be able to get information at your level. Take advantage of the internet. There are a lot of free information that you can make do with, especially for small and medium enterprises, because I think they are at the worst end, at worst receiving end of cybercrime, especially when it comes to business email compromise, which is very, very prevalent in Africa. And so my advice today to everyone is that you must take advantage of what is available out there, what is free, what your budget can buy, and do as much as you can, imbibe as much as you can. Look at the smaller frameworks, and the smaller standards, that are put together for businesses of your size. And then for the bigger organizations, the strategy, the frameworks, and then getting the right skill set and retaining the right skill set as well, I think is crucial and important, to be secure. And just like I said in the beginning, security should come first, and then you can move on to compliance. Compliance should never be the goal. It should always be about security.
100%, and I think you've really emphasized the point that there's no one size fits all when it comes to compliance and when it comes to security. So thank you so much for that. We've got about 3 more minutes, and I've got to go to Lydie and Lehan and then bring the conversation to a consultative end. And Lydie, this question comes to you directly, and I'll read it again. Is that while we've spoken about many aspects of cybercrime, can you comment just a little bit around human trafficking? And do you have any perspective on that at all?
Please, can you repeat your question, Ali? Please?
So the question is that, do you have any perspective on cybercrime and human trafficking? Is the cyberspace also being used to put human lives at risk?
Yes, absolutely, for sure. I mean, the impact of cybersecurity can also be on the human life, of course. there are traffic on people. Like, I will give you a scenario. For example, I can call someone and say, okay, you know what? I'm your uncle. I have an issue, and I want you to come and try to pick me up somewhere. I can do that, and you will come, and then I will be able. You will maybe open your door, and it's through a phone call. Through a phone call that I have been able to attract you, make you open your door, and then perpetrate an illegal action. So yes, there is a threat on the people. There is a threat on the children, which is very scaring, because the children are more and more on internet, and of course they are innocent, and they are using today, the criminals are using that internet to attract them, not only to take the sensitive information from them, but also to attract them in places where they will never go. So there is a big risk on that. We really need to take care, and especially when it comes to children. And this is my fight today. Online security, safety of children online is a key. And when it's come to life, our children are at risk. We really need to take care. We really need to pay attention to it.
Absolutely. Lydie, another wonderful topic that you brought up is on the impact of cybercrime on children. And I know this is a topic that we're going to discuss definitely in future sessions. Lehan, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes very quickly to summarize the conversation, but also, can you help point our audience to some free resources that Kaspersky provides, and how folks can engage with your team if they're looking for some tools or some information to stay safe, specifically within the African context? Closing comments to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so basically, to summarize, maybe as a big topic, we should close this off by saying we need to really get a grasp on awareness this year. I think you need to get yourself skilled wherever you can. Now, as Ola and them have mentioned, there's a lot of open source stuff available. If money is an issue, go try out YouTube, Google, and so on, and get yourself a little bit more aware. This will serve yourself well as your surrounding people, because it's so interesting, the subject matter, that you will inevitably find yourself talking to your family and your friends about it, and that way you can spread awareness that way as well. From a company perspective, you need to work from a cybersecurity first perspective going forward. As one of the ladies mentioned, I forget who, that you need to make this a massive topic, a boardroom topic. The management needs to start understanding that this is something that can make or break us completely. So it needs to become a high priority and work on a security first approach, zero trust kind of approach, and then start worrying about compliance. Compliance is just a recipe. Security is the actual instructions on how to put the recipe together. So don't just work on a checklist, actually make sure that the tools work as they are intended to work. But yeah, so those are the two things, is basically to make sure that everyone gets more aware. That's the only way that we're going to get ahead of the curve, and for everyone to start understanding. I mean, if we brush on the topic of kids and the access that they now have on cybersecurity, on cyber and digital tools and tablets and iPhones and all those kind of things, it's really starting to rapidly evolve into a way that if you don't get on top of it now, it can completely run away from us, to a point where at one stage we just have to say, stop all cyber devices in my house, because I don't know what's going on anymore. To get in touch with us, it's quite simple. You can obviously get in touch with us on our website. There's a contact us section. There's a lot of free tools as well on our website. So if you go to our secure list page, we've got free tools for ransomware, for example, to check if you've been affected by ransomware. I think that's probably one of the most devastating malware that you can get. And I'm very surprised that the word didn't come up once in this conversation, which means that we had a very good panel that knows a lot more than just ransomware, which I'm very happy to see. But we've got some tools around that. We've got some free scanning tools, and then we've got a lot of materials for families. There's a whole page that we created for families and kids and so on, with a lot of free tools once again. So go and get yourself familiar with that. If you need more information, get in touch with us. A lot of us do work in an advisory role as well. So we're very happy to share knowledge and share information and share some free trainings and tools and materials that we've created. And this is once again, because we can't fight this battle as a company ourselves. Everyone needs to get behind it. That's, I think, what needs to change, is that the whole world needs to become cybersecurity culture rich. It needs to be part of, like, how do I brush my teeth in the morning? You know, it needs to become that front of mind. Only then do we stand even half a chance of really, you know, fighting the rapid rate at which the attackers can actually have access to.
Lehan, thank you very much. And from a Kaspersky's perspective, you stayed true to the motto on making a safer world, but also in making visible a lot of invisible see at the forefront when we engage with technology. To my panelists, Lehan, Lydie, Sherifat, Ola, Heba, this was a large panel that we had, lots of you, but all of you shared your perspective in a unique way. And I want to thank you for taking the time and allowing me and trusting me to moderate this session. I am going to ask you to stay on so that we can have probably 30 seconds of concluding remarks and goodbyes. But until then, I'm just going to summarize the conversation for our audience by reminding them that there is one more session left in today's Beyond Borders conference in Women in Cybersecurity, where the team focus on Africa. The next session is going to be looking at creating careers for women in cybersecurity, specifically women in Africa, and getting them further engaged in security. And I hope our panelists today were able to get forward a whole bunch of points which you can then rewatch on demand, but also take advantage of some of the links that have been posted on the ticker below, as well as in the live chat and the cyberexchange.ca. You can connect with a lot of my panelists on cyberexchange.ca or directly to their websites. And once again, thank you all for joining. If there's anything that I learned from today, you know what we say, that Africa doesn't just need strong and independent individuals, strong and independent institutions. And these individuals that are here today are showing you how, through their institutions, through their groups, they're creating strong, independent, and creative individuals for the economy and the future for cyber in Africa. And in true spirit of Beyond Borders, we saw Africa represented today as one continent, one people, one voice. Thank you to my panelists for joining me today, and thank you to all of you who joined into this session. I'll see you tomorrow, and I wish you an enjoyable conference, and I hope you enjoy the next session. Take care, stay safe, stay healthy, wherever you are in the world.